Hello, I'm Kate Hughes and I am a visual artist. I'm here at Aldborough Studio Trail. Aldborough in Suffolk is a beautiful town by the sea, and I'm exhibiting alongside Emma Foss, aka The Little Camden Studio. I'm going to talk a little bit about my work generally, and then I'm also going to talk about my year-long line drawing project, which is what you can see here. The exhibition is open tomorrow, 11 till 5, and also next weekend, Saturday and Sunday. I did a talk, the last time I did a talk was almost exactly 1 year ago, and it was about where I'd got to with my line drawings. A year on, a lot more has become apparent to me, and I've made over 1,000 now. My background is in fine art. I study fine art, but I have worked in many medium, so drawing has always been like the focal point, but I've also made drawn films. I've done sound installations, and I'm also a painter. I've done some really interesting projects, especially stuff to do with science. So I was the artist in residence with a heart surgeon at the Papworth Hospital many years ago, and I went in and I was drawing open heart surgeries live in theatre. Did that across about 2009, 2010. I've also collaborated with neuroscientists at part of Art Neuro, which is a kind of science-art fusion program. It was really exciting. But yeah, I also really love narrative and storytelling. I think that a few years ago when I was doing pictures that were kind of to do with robots, and I was reading a lot of Ovid and particularly the Metamorphosis. There's a story called Pygmalion, and it's about a sculptor who falls in love with his own creation and it magically comes to life. This idea of kind of awakening has always been really interesting for me. But I always think that art, even if it's abstract, is often a form of storytelling. And I think the project that I've been doing recently really explores the way that artists are storytellers, even if it's not direct, even if it's not explicit. We're always trying to communicate something, because there's no point in making a picture just so that it looks like something else. What you're trying to do is express something that doesn't communicate on its own without a picture. And it can be using words, it can be using sounds, but I think there's some deep drive for us to communicate the things that really matter and actually are insight. Because when we have an insight into something, it's natural to want to share it. And I think we're always striving to make these kind of connections, either, in this introverted way, deep inside the brain, or because we want to bond with other people and feel that we're part of something wider than we can articulate. So, 2020, I started doing line drawings. I've always done line drawings, but this is the first time that they've become the main focus of my work. I started at the beginning of 2020, and everything seemed normal until it wasn't. But I think what's been great about this project is it was the perfect project at the perfect time. So life is very tense. Like, spending a couple of months on a painting would have seemed unsustainable, whereas actually the kind of frenetic energy that the pandemic seemed to usher in really suited these very quick, spontaneous line drawings. It felt like there was a lot of emotion, a lot of news, a lot of events going on, and actually working very quickly really suited where I was emotionally, psychologically. In fact, as of today, I've made over 1,100 line drawings, of which these are just a few. a lot of observational drawing. I think it's really important to draw from life and to look at the work of other artists, to kind of start to understand how pictures work and how the structure of things work. I don't think I could have made these drawings, even though 90% of them are really intuitive. I don't think I could have done that without a lot of practice in line drawing and figure drawing and generally drawing from life. I would say one of the visitors who came to the exhibition today said that she really liked the way I'd drawn a particular hand. And that was really interesting because when I was the artist in residence with a heart surgeon, I was constantly drawing hands and drawing hands that were moving. And it was a real kind of crash course in how to kind of draw a hand in a few lines. I think one of the things that I really like about this type of drawing is that you draw really spare lines. There's no unneeded information. Basically, no need to put in anything that isn't essential. In some ways, it's actually harder than when you have a lot of detail, because there's really nowhere to hide in these. It actually reminds me of the kind of classical Chinese painting, where the most masterful thing would be to render a landscape or an animal in a few strokes. And that would be something that would take years, perhaps decades to master. So for me, it's kind of something that I aspire to. The other thing about pen drawing is that there's really nowhere to hide. I don't pencil things in first. I just go for it. And sometimes you end up making these mistakes. This one's actually a really good example. Here is a figure who's kind of tipped over on itself. And actually, when I made a mistake here, I realised that it made the drawing more interesting. There's no need to, draw a vertical person with 2 legs and 2 arms. We all know what a person looks like. But actually here, what made the drawing more interesting was the mistake which I then took and rerouted. It became a surprise to me, and I think when you're making art, it's so wonderful to come across surprises, because especially if you're doing it over a long period, you can sometimes feel that you get stuck. And actually, pen drawing, for me, particularly in this group, has really helped me to kind of slightly lean into the awkwardness of marks. I think this one's a pretty good example. I drew one figure and then I decided I wanted another figure, so I drew them behind and then an arm across. There's no sense of perspective, and it's almost as if one figure is shifting in and out, like maybe less real than the other. And I felt this started to really express better what I was trying to get at. I think one of the things about making so many line drawings was that certain things started to repeat, and actually I started to get some more insight about the themes I was interested in and the types of mark that I found really engaging. I think the experience of shielding during the pandemic was probably really important for this particular group of drawings, because it was obviously, and I think for many people, quite a solitary time, and some of these drawings, most of them perhaps in fact, they have very little context. They're creatures in space. You have a diver diving almost into nothing. You have hands holding a glass. The location, the context is completely absent. Even here you have a figure fast asleep with a pillow, and there's no sense of where she is or why she's there. I think also being isolated because of shielding really reconnected me strongly with storytelling and this idea of kind of creating stories as an escape, creating stories as a way to express what it was that I was feeling, and also taking one small thing that I felt and fictionalizing it, and through a kind of fiction, starting to feel that it became more real. I think one of the things that first made me feel a little uncomfortable doing these line drawings is my background is in fine art. I'm proficient with detail, and I know that I sometimes fall back on it because it's very easy to impress with a lot of detail. Whereas with these line drawings, you can sometimes feel that you're creating a cartoon, and there's a kind of a status element to different styles of art. However, line drawings also have like a fine art context. The ink drawings by Matisse, in particular, are an influence. But I guess what I like about the kind of slight blurring into comics, cartoons, is that there's already this weight of storytelling. And what I ended up doing for this exhibition was to choose carefully some of these drawings that I thought together, each one feels like it could be a story all on its own. Many are ambiguous. But when you put them together, they start to make oblique references. Nothing's particularly explicit, but when you look at them for long enough, you start to think, what are the connections between these? What kind of story is this? I think because I made them all during the pandemic, they all feel like they're made in the same sort of time and the same sort of mood. Many are hopeful. Many, I think, are about tiredness or about love, but I think tenderness is probably the key word for this series. This picture, for example, is partly based on the Pietà, which is the traditional painting of the Virgin Mary when she takes her son down from the cross and she holds him. But what I like and what I feel is successful about this picture is there's a tenderness which is both grief but also a gentle kind of love. And I like that it's ambiguous. I like that we don't know if these people are lovers, friends, a mother and her child, or someone grieving. I'm sure that a lot of this came out of the images that I was watching about COVID. Two of my friends were also mourning during this time, and I think that probably also affected it. Swimming is another big theme for this group of work. I really love the idea of swimming as an escape. I love the idea that when you plunge underneath the water, the sound changes, and it's as though you get into a different world. There's many swimmers. There's people on the seashore. There's divers. I like the idea that it's both an escape and also a fantasy, but also that it's just something that connects you with nature and with the world around you. Many of these works I actually made in Aldborough, and I've been spending a lot of time here and going by the sea. And I think even though these are mostly drawn instinctively and from imagination, there's a sense that it's something true, like that in connection with this kind of texture, there's a reality and a relief at the same time. The other thing that I've always been really interested in is how memory works. So I really like modernist literature, and I really like thinking about memory and its texture. So the fog of memory is very subjective. When we have memories, we often don't have the right context for them. Memory is very non-linear, very non-sequential. And actually, this idea that we think of one thing and then we hop to the next, to the next, to the next. And sometimes you have two memories next to each other. They seem unrelated. But I think art, and I think certainly literature, quite often reflect this kind of thing. But I think it's something to be celebrated. Like, that actually our memories already tell a story, and it's rich in texture, and it's rich in associations. I also think that there's quite often things in these drawings that different people read different things into. Some associations are very personal, some are universal. And I think the great thing about showing your art to people is that they bring their own experiences, and everyone sees a picture slightly differently. Apart from doing these drawings, I have also been doing some writing for the first time in a while. And the writing, like the drawings, is very spontaneous. It makes these interesting connections, things I hadn't expected. And I started to work very scruffy on bits of paper. I'm now in the process of putting different bits of text and different images together. And even that is creating an exponentially larger story. And it's becoming a thing in its own right. I think what I really like when people look at this work is for them to start making their own stories. And also to think about their own experiences during the pandemic. Did they relate to some of these? Did they not? Almost none of these are directly relating to the pandemic itself. The work is not explicit because life doesn't utterly change. What we understand doesn't utterly change because of what we've been through. There's a consistency. There are always these kinds of emotions, these kinds of experiences. And I think it's wonderful to think, even in a really difficult time, that it's one small thing in a huge scope of experience. So, that's my line drawing project. It's been very lovely having everyone here. Thank you. As always, you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook. It would be lovely to see anyone who hasn't so far got to the exhibition. We are here tomorrow until 11 till 5, and we're here next weekend, Saturday and Sunday, 11 till 5. There are other events going on. The wonderful Emma Foss will be leading a free drawing workshop tomorrow at 3 p.m. You can get free tickets via the link. And next weekend we have author Miriam Matar, who's going to come and join us Saturday at 6 p.m.